Welcome to another edition of Ministry Footprints. It's always great to talk to my good friend Nigel James. And we've been deliberating this question about, can we do mission during COVID? Morning, Nigel. Good to have you back again.
Thank you, Carl. Good to be there and good to be talking about missions. It does seem strange talking about missions, particularly overseas missions in COVID, in the pandemic, but I think things are still possible.
Yeah, and I know, we've both been on multiple mission trips to different countries. I think what we'll do today, I think, is chat about the international side and what we can still do overseas, and that what we do in the UK then and what we can do local. So, but the international side, something we've both been very busy with over the years. You were telling me earlier that you just come back from Pakistan, but on Zoom. How has that gone for you?
Yeah, I did 2 meetings in Pakistan. I've got some ministry connections with some young pastors there, and I'd visited Pakistan in person a few years ago, and one of these young men living in Lahore and ministering to the villages in the rural areas outside of Lahore asked me to do an online preach for him. So we set that up. He got a screen and a video projector into a village, rented some buses, brought 3 villages together, and I preached on 3 of the I am statements of Jesus. He did the preaching, really. I was preaching in English. He was translating. And the Holy Spirit took hold of that, and we saw over 200 salvations, and I think something like 19 healing. So all that from the luxury of my own study. And then another friend, who's the brother of a pastor, also in Lahore, contacted me when I just mentioned this online, and he said, "Oh, can you do something for us?" So I preached into their church service a couple of Sundays later in Lahore. I agreed to do it, and then realised with the time change it was going to be 7 in the morning in the UK, so I got up about 6:30 and preached in a nice smart shirt on the top and my pyjama bottoms on the bottom still. But that was all right.
The wonders of Zoom.
And 17 young men in their youth group gave their lives to Christ on that.
That's amazing.
Well.
So I mean, I think mission's not finished by any means, any stretch of the imagination, is it?
No, well, exactly. I mean, I think we are in a time where many students and young adults will have had their summer overseas scuppered. They might have had a gap year with a mission organisation overseas scuppered. Churches that were used to sending teams overseas during the summer haven't been able to do that. But like so many difficult and negative situations, God can redeem those and turn what appears negative and the end of the story for us into something positive and fruitful. And I love that verse that Paul mentions when he talks about Jesus in Ephesians 2, and he says he came and preached to you who are far away and peace to those who were near. And this idea of that mission can be for those that are far away, but also those that are near. Now that's, I guess Paul's talking there about the Jews and the Gentiles, but he's also geographically talking about, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. And this might be a season where we can't physically go far. I think we can still connect with people far away, but perhaps this is a season where many of us who are used to going far, this is our chance to, on the mission field, to go near, as it were.
Yeah, but you said a couple of things there that are interesting, because obviously going on mission trips, short-term mission trips, I've taken loads of teams over the years to different places, and the team raises, each person raises their own airfare, accommodation costs, food while you're there, money to bless. And just because a person may not have been able to go, doesn't mean that you couldn't still fundraise. Obviously there's tons of scams and fake stuff going on the internet, but if you plan to go on a mission trip, you could still get in touch with the person who was going to lead the trip or the ministry that you were going to go with. Because one of the things I found out is during COVID is that the need on the ground is even greater. I was talking to somebody that we support in Uganda, Santid Matthew, And he was saying in Uganda they had like 2 hours notice of lockdown, and then the government completely stopped all vehicles, all transport, everything from happening. So, you know, most of the people there that work is day to day, hand to mouth, so they couldn't feed themselves. So we were able to use some money we had planned to spend on going to Uganda on the next trip, and sent that to him. And he then talked to a local official and said, "Can I just go and buy food for a week or two for the whole of my village?" You know, the people lived around him. And you know, that, I'm sure that literally has saved some lives, because
Absolutely.
when
Yeah.
you're in that situation, it's crazy, isn't it, to be cut off completely
Yeah.
from normal life.
Yeah, I've got a similar story of my friend, Pastor Emmanuel Jonah in Liberia, Northwest Africa. He's been connected with the Ignite ministry for many years, and now he's part of Elim's global network as well. And he was saying the same. You know, once lockdown happened in Liberia, people couldn't get out of their villages, which meant they couldn't get to the shops to buy food, which meant many of them were starving. They're not like us. They don't have a larder full of tins
Yeah.
and food that can get us through a few weeks. They live from day to day. And so I think Emmanuel received 2 lots of money from Elim's emergency relief fund, COVID relief fund. And he chose a different area of Liberia each time, filled his car full of bags of rice and vegetables, actually borrowed a car to do it, he hasn't got a car, and went off and gathered villages together and gave out food parcels to families. And he tells a lovely story on one of those journeys. He and his wife were driving hours away, and they picked up a young man on the side of the road. Told them, asked his name, what was he doing, where was he going. They shared a little bit of their story and said to him, "Are you a Christian?" And he said, "Yes." And Emmanuel said, "Well, tell me your testimony." The next 5 minutes, it was clear that the young man wasn't a Christian. You know. Well, he was by the time he got out the car.
Amen.
And prayed with him, and gave him a Bible. Had been sending him some money for Bibles. Got to the meeting, and as he was giving out the food, he was also sharing why he was there and being motivated by the love of God and the presence of Jesus. And one of the ladies, a mum in the village, came up afterwards and said, how can I give my life to Jesus? So as well as giving her a big bag of food, he actually, you know, led her to Jesus at the same time. And I think there are those type of stories all over the place. So you're right. I think if you can't go, you know, if you had a trip cancelled or you're expecting to go, I would say the first thing is stay in contact with that person, with that leader, with that group. Actually, COVID has given me a little bit more space and time to connect with about 20 leaders worldwide that I wouldn't have visited all of those in the last year or so. Some of them I might have, but I've made a determined effort to stay in touch with them. I've set a WhatsApp group up, and they're now all connecting with other people. So, you know, the family I know in Israel now knows the family I know in India, now knows the family I know in Pakistan, and they're all connecting. And I had a lovely thing at Easter where that pastor in Ashdod in Israel that I know was saying that he was going to go to the Western Wall on Easter Sunday and pray and intercede for his family. And would anybody else like him to pray for their family? So a lot of my friends from all around the world were saying yes, please, and sending the names of their husband, their wife, their kids. And he took these prayer lists and interceded and prayed for all these families from around the world at the Western Wall in Jerusalem on Easter Sunday. So I'd say you can stay in contact with people.
Yeah.
Definitely pray for them. And, you know, one thing I notice in the developing world is that people really valued being prayed for. You know, we know the importance of prayer, but we also know in the UK how sometimes people are a bit flippant about prayer. You know, yeah, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you. You know, and then it goes out of our mind, and we don't.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed at how valuable prayer is, how integral prayer is to so many of my friends around the world. That yes, they need that friendship, and quite often they need some financial help as well. But their main thing is they take great comfort in that other leaders are praying for them. So I'd say stay in contact, find out how you can best pray for people. And just like you said, if you've got some disposable income, that you would have used on a flight or mission trip costs, then ask God, how's the best way that you can do that. And again, through this last 6-9 months or so, because I haven't obviously traveled overseas at all, Jill and I have had a little bit more money that we've been able to put in the way of some of these leaders when there's been the need arise for food or for Bibles, for ministry projects, whatever it might be. So I think there's plenty of ways, and it's never been easier to connect with people all over the world with the technology that we've got now.
Yeah, I'm sure Paul would have used Zoom to avoid a few shipwrecks, wouldn't he? Yeah, I mean, it's the same with us. We always made a point of going out for a meal once a week as a family, and during COVID we weren't able to do that, so we put that money one side, and we're actually building a church in Uganda at the moment, partly from that money, and some other friends are helping. But you just do what you got to do, and it might be that you could put up with not having that new laptop for another month or two, and just think about
Yes.
where that money could be spent and have a greater impact in
Yeah,
God's kingdom.
and what we know is that a comparatively small amount of money in the Western world goes a long way in the developing world, and what we think might not be a lot of money can actually make a significant difference, especially if you're like saying, if you put a regular small amount away, there's no end to what God could do with that money.
And the people, on the ground are really resourceful, because when Santid realized COVID was coming and lockdown might be happening on and off for a number of months, he actually asked us if we could send some money, and he's bought a load of chicks, about 250 chicks. So he's been growing those, set up a bit of a pen, and he's been growing chicks, obviously for food later on. But that food, they'll all mature at about the same time. That food, I'm sure, will go to feed the village for a week or two. So it's amazing.
Well, going back to Emmanuel in Liberia, I was due to be in Liberia in July with a small team for their Ignite annual youth conference. He gathers 250 younger leaders together every year for a week in the summer. I've been twice before, and I was due to go again. Obviously, we cancelled that. We never even booked the tickets. We cancelled that way out. And it was going to be impossible for him to gather all those people together due to the COVID restrictions. But he could do one-day conferences across the nation. So he did 5 one-day younger leaders conferences. Wow. And got something like 700 younger leaders across the 5 conferences, whereas if he'd have gathered them for the week, there'd have been about 250 there.
Yeah.
So it's just, God can, like I said, difficulties, God can always overturn into something positive if you're just willing to be open to it.
Yeah, and we've got to have that investigative prayer life with God to say, okay, Lord, here's my problem. Can you inspire me as I sleep, as I pray? Inspire me with a solution, please. That's the very, very brief touch into the international side. Obviously, we've then got national and local mission. We found on the national scene that our mission's been more valuable than ever as Neighbourhood Prayer Network. So I was reporting to trustees just a few days ago that there were 184,000 prayer interactions just on the Facebook group from the turn of the year until recently. So, people, and we didn't have that group more than a year ago. It didn't exist. So people, obviously, when COVID hit, the highest point, there were 50,000 prayer interactions happening every 4 weeks, which was about April time. And had COVID not been there, had the group not been there, had we not been servicing that well and encouraging people to pray, that wouldn't have happened at all. So we found that to be a tremendous surprise and a blessing to people in this COVID season. What other things have you seen happening around the UK that have been an interesting growth?
I think you're right in that local churches are at least engaging in prayer for the nation, perhaps more consistently than they've ever done before. You know, here in Wales, I'm part of a ministry called Wales Wide, which is committed to, you know, church planting and strengthening in particularly some of the most difficult areas of Wales, rural areas, valleys, Welsh-speaking areas. And we've often said that, and this I'm sure applies across the UK. Most churches are pretty good in their own square mile. You know, they do something locally, they connect. Mm. And most churches have got something on their overseas missions agenda. Even in COVID, they're still sending money overseas, or they're praying for a missionary, or they're praying for a nation. But it's amazing how many people, how many churches missed out the bit in the middle. They do Jerusalem well, they do the ends of the earth well, and they don't often consider, you know, Judea and Samaria, their own patch or the patch right next door. So I think, you know, who would have imagined that we were out on our doorsteps every Thursday night cheering on the NHS and carers, you know, and then as a result, lots of churches then profiling the people who work for them in the medical professions, in hospitals and caring professions, praying for them, praying for the NHS. I've, with part of my Elim regional hat on, I've been meeting a couple of times a month on Zoom with some Elim hospital chaplains and some prison chaplains actually as well, and just praying for them and hearing the incredible work that they've been doing throughout the COVID pandemic. And you know, lots of church buildings have shut and gone completely online, but some have become, you know, the hub of the community. I think of an Elim church in Barmouth on the North Wales coast, where they haven't been able to meet in their building because the food bank expanded so much that their main church worship centre is full of food for the food bank.
That's incredible.
So, and they became, you know, they became a real key hub in the community for people that needed food. And several churches have really responded well, I think, and not just got down on their knees and prayed, but I was going to say get their hands dirty. You can't get your hands dirty in COVID, but you know what I mean? They've got stuck in and they've got involved and they've done something despite the restrictions. So I think that's been helpful. And there's so many creative ways. I think quite often that we see the land around us as enemy territory rather than as a land of opportunity. You know, we look outside and we think we must protect ourselves from what's going on in this evil world around us, you know, and that the devil's on every doorstep. And actually, if we're brave and we step into our local community, then we can see that it really is a land of opportunity for God's people, even in the time of COVID and all the restrictions now. You know, it's just what are the keys? So I was in a church Bible study last night, and we're talking about, we've got a little church on Barry Island in South Wales, Gavin and Stacey country.
Yeah.
How can we let that population who live on Barry Island know that we are there and know that we care for them, even though we can only get 30 in our little building at the moment, even though we can't, you know, do much face to face? But are there some online ways? Should we be advertising the local newspaper to help people who are bereaved, to help people who are lonely, to help people debt management? There's loads of ways creatively that we can connect into the local community. Is there something we should be doing to pray and support our local primary school? You know, are there elderly people, are shut-ins? Are there care homes where the staff are, you know, working their fingers to the bone, where we can drop off some care parcels or something like that? There's, you know, if you see the world around you through the eyes of Jesus, there are plenty of opportunities there to connect.
I know you mentioned debt management. A few weeks back, we had someone on our street had handwritten a letter to and photocopied it for each household, basically saying, you know, if you are struggling with debt and you don't know what to do, here's some agencies and numbers that you could ring and they will help. And I thought, wow, somebody's gone to that trouble. You know, they didn't have a computer or a printer or designed it or anything like that. But we adopted that principle in NPN, and I had several thousand debt help cards for neighbours produced, and people have been ordering them, and then they
Yeah.
anonymously, not to embarrass anybody, they just stick it through the letterbox and then just see what happens. But I think that's one area that in local mission we could be really, really beneficial to people with. I was talking to Gavin Calver the other day, and he was saying that something like 40% of the UK adult population has tuned into a virtual church service.
Wow.
So, during COVID time.
Yeah.
So those meetings and those services, I know Ivy Church up in Manchester has done a really good series on the practicalities of helping people in your community.
Mhm.
So a normal service has been kind of pulled back a little bit,
Yeah.
but he's involved a really useful message for any non-Christian that might be viewing from outside. And you were saying earlier that even the international folk that you connect with, they've actually been coming to your virtual church, haven't they?
Yeah, so not so much on a Sunday, but certainly our midweek Bible study and our prayer meeting. We've had a number of international folk come to join us in that, where they haven't had, quite often in the developing world, the leader of the church might have an internet connection and might have a smartphone, but not many people in the congregation. So for a little rural village church in India to suddenly say we're going to go online, won't happen. But some of the key leaders who've got that ability, I think they're connecting more and more with people in the Western world. So we've had, again, my friend Emmanuel from Liberia is with us most weeks in our prayer meeting and our Bible study. I think the other thing about local stuff, Carl, is that you and I we completely believe in overseas mission. We've done loads. We've taken. Sorry.
That proves this is real.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We both completely believe in overseas mission, and we've taken loads of people overseas.
Yeah.
We know in a way it's not a regular situation, is it? You're parachuted in somewhere, you live that life of a missionary for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then it's back to normal. Now, what I like is that when you come back, it's often the phrase we use now, the new normal. When you're on a mission trip, life is a little bit different when you come back because you've seen things through different eyes. But I think the most effective mission is actually a lifestyle. So, it's much easier to live that life consistently day by day rather than thinking, okay, I've got to go and do mission. Let's be mission. Let's be missional people in the way that we live our lives. And that's a little bit easier in our day-to-day connections. And some people, I believe God's given me a call in my life to stand alongside a number of specific leaders across the world and go that journey with them. And typically that would have mean visiting them, spending time with them, supporting them in prayer, supporting them financially, still doing all that. But my journey to be with them now is online for the time being. But many people are called, their mission field is their street, is their the mums they meet outside the school gate, the guys in the gym, whatever it is, and that cultivating that lifestyle of mission. And I think that's where perhaps some people are feeling really challenged by COVID. I'm in lockdown, I'm at home, I can't get out. How do I continue that life of faith and sharing? And I just think creatively there are ways, certainly ways to do that. And of course, the other thing is that with the ethnically diverse world that we live in, some of us can reach the nations on our doorstep.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere that the Polish-speaking community in the UK is larger than the Welsh-speaking community in the UK by population. It's amazing. I think with all of this, where I live in the Neath Valley, there's 55,000 people live in that valley. There's 130 churches, about 1,500 Christians, and it's easy to slip into a rhythm or lifestyle where the 53,500 others that don't go to church are not considered. They're not considered to be a mission field. They're not considered to be a person you could reach out to. You know, you say hi to somebody as you put the bins out or whatever, but we don't view that person as an opportunity to share Jesus with in the same way as we might have done overseas, because you, like you say, it's easy to gear yourself up and to get excited about going somewhere and doing something.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas on your own doorstep, you know, that there's actually a bigger harvest in my valley than some of the
yeah.
places I go overseas to serve.
And I think the danger now, Carl, is that when churches are going back into their buildings after lockdown, mostly with a very reduced capacity, they haven't got any space for visitors.
Yeah.
You know, but so most churches in the UK have always had plenty of spare seats on a Sunday morning. Now a few thriving churches have had challenges. You know, they have to do 2-3 services, they can't get everybody in. But lots of churches, if that mythical, you know, new family turns up, there's always space for them. And now when churches are having to ask their members to book in, you know, or take it in turns to come into the building on a Sunday because they can't all get in, the
Yeah.
danger is we'll forget the visitor.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and the churches will be full of our members, which is great, but there actually won't be any space for anybody new to come in. So I think that's something that churches have to grapple with in
Yeah.
a post-COVID world, when we're still socially distancing on a Sunday. How are we creating space for newcomers to feel welcomed and part of what we're doing?
Okay, well, time is going. Just in the closing couple of minutes, Nigel, if you were to give 2 or 3 takeaways from this, as what somebody could be doing, practical things for their local street or community, local mission, what would you say? Where should they start and focus on?
Well, I think the first one I would go back to international mission and say that international mission hasn't finished just because you can't jump on a plane and go
Yeah,
overseas.
yeah,
So keep that dynamic. I think locally, do something, but don't do something too hasty. You know, pray, seek God's wisdom. What are the keys? Is there a group of people, uh, a geographical area nearby that is untouched by the gospel, that as a church you could feel called to? And as you know, just because the church down the road's got a great youth group, or just because the church down the road's got a great old people's ministry, it doesn't necessarily mean that your church has to have that. Your church has to have the ministry that God wants it to have. You know, so there might be a group of people that nobody else is connecting with. I think the other thing is just individually, you know, be open to the people around you and the needs and the worries that they have. And if, like you say, more people are connecting online with church, more people are praying, we know many people are worried, concerned, confused about the world out there, then as Christians, we need to be able to minister into that situation. So I quite often say, you know, when we read the Bible, God never promises us a life free from difficulties and hardships. That's not the case. But he does promise us a life where the Good Shepherd walks alongside us. And I think we've got an opportunity to say to people in this COVID pandemic that the only way we're getting through it, the only way we're continuing, the only way, the reason that we've got our hope and our joy and our faith is because we know a good shepherd is walking alongside us. And if we can lead them to the good shepherd, then that's our job done, really. So I would say pray, ask God to give you a serving opportunity as an individual, as a family, as a church. And you know, it could be 5 minutes down your street. It could be 5 miles away. I love the idea of churches taking some responsibility for their nation. You know, church, the mission budget is probably spent on local mission in the town. It's probably spent on international mission. How much of it is spent on national mission? You know, organisations like yourselves, there's many organisations that are faithfully trying to serve in the UK, who I'm guessing the COVID pandemic has hit financially quite hard. So some churches in lockdown, actually some churches' finances have benefited because people are still giving, but the church hasn't been spending anywhere near as much money on building upkeep and things like that. So I would say if you're a church leader listening to this, as well as is there an overseas ministry that you could be giving into? Is it time to support a ministry that's trying to, you know, build the church, trying to do outreach in the UK that church could support as well?
Great. Well, thanks, Nigel. It's always great to talk
Pleasure.
to you.
Yeah. Good to see you, Carl.
And we'll catch up soon, no doubt, on another topic on another day.
Absolutely. Yeah, bless you. Thank you, mate.
God bless.